We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay.
On the evening of January the 31st, 2026, an 84-year-old woman returned home after dinner with her family in the Catalina foothills of Arizona. Her garage door opened at 9:48 p.m. It then closed 2 minutes later. That was the final confirmed moment that the woman was seen alive. Just hours later at 1:47 a.m., her doorbell camera disconnected. At 2:28 a.m., her pacemaker connected to an app on her phone that stopped transmitting data. Within just days, ransom letters demanding millions of dollars in Bitcoin were sent out to media outlets. Deadlines were issued. Those deadlines passed. In this video, I will share with you 7 pieces of evidence that will make you question everything about this disturbing case. By the way, this is Dark Case, and you can call me Jack. I bring you rare and unseen true crime cases, as well as other things that you may later regret knowing, with multiple uploads every single week. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, make sure you join the Dark Case family now by simply hitting subscribe and turning all notifications on. And now for today's silly little question. Well, it's not really a question at all. Describe yourself in 3 words. Just drop them down in the comments. Quick update by the way, the Dark Case Patreon is now no more. However, I have created some new tiers here on YouTube memberships, so there are new perks including exclusive videos, as well as a candid behind the scenes podcast that I record in my car, in a cemetery. But now, on with the video. Nancy Guthrie was 84 years old and living in the Catalina foothills near Tucson, Arizona. She had limited mobility, and she could not walk more than 50 yards without difficulty. She required daily medication, and she had a pacemaker that was connected to a mobile app on her phone. On Saturday, January the 21st, she used Uber to travel to her daughter Annie's home at 5:32 p.m. She then spent the evening having dinner and playing games with her family. At around 9:48 p.m., her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni, drove her back to her home. Law enforcement later stated that Tommaso waited until Nancy was inside her home before leaving. At 9:58 p.m., the garage door to Nancy's home opened, and then at 9:50 p.m. it closed. Investigators have stated that they assume she was home for the night at that time. There were no public reports of disturbances in the neighborhood on that evening. The following events would not be discovered until hours later. At 1:47 a.m., the Nest doorbell camera at Nancy's home disconnected. Approximately 25 minutes later, the camera registered motion at the front door. Frustratingly though, no footage was stored because the subscription-based video storage service was not active. At 2:28 a.m., that pacemaker app connected to Nancy's phone. It registered a disconnection. Hours later, Nancy failed to attend church. This is something she routinely did with friends. One of those friends alerted the family, and at 11:56 a.m., relatives arrived at her home to check on her. At 12:03 p.m., a 911 call was placed to the Pima County Sheriff's Department. Deputies then arrived at 12:15 p.m. Investigators located red DNA on the front porch. That was confirmed through testing to belong to Nancy. In missing persons investigations, confirmation that red DNA belongs to the missing individual immediately elevates the case from a welfare check to potential violent crime. Sheriff Chris Nanos later stated publicly that he believed Nancy was removed from the home against her will. He stated that she did not leave voluntarily. Given her limited mobility and her medical needs, the possibility of her walking away on her own, this was considered unlikely. That early determination would shape the direction of the investigation moving forwards. Nancy's home was treated as a crime scene. The search for a missing elderly woman became a criminal investigation that the whole world was watching. Nancy Guthrie was not an unknown resident of Tucson. She was the mother of Savannah Guthrie, co-anchor of TV show Today, one of the most watched morning news programs in the United States. Savannah has served as a host of the program since 2012 and is also the NBC News chief legal correspondent. Her public profile meant that when Nancy was reported missing, the case received immediate national coverage. Major news outlets across the country began reporting developments in real time. Federal agencies also became publicly visible in the investigation early on. It is believed that the scale of media attention has led to the muddying of waters and some unwanted, questionable ransom letters. The fact that Savannah was Nancy's daughter, it also adds some new layers to this case. Was Nancy targeted because of who her daughter was? Was she targeted because Nancy must be wealthy? Or perhaps the burglary was random? But when the burglary realized that Nancy had famous family, they saw this as an opportunity to make more money, or maybe even panicked, and did what they felt they had to do to keep Nancy quiet. Additional DNA samples were collected from inside and outside Nancy's home. Authorities have stated that some of the DNA recovered was described as minimal, while other samples remain under analysis. In cases involving suspected abduction from a residence, investigators typically look for signs of forced entry, of disturbed property, or displaced items that indicate some form of struggle. However, in this case, public officials have not released detailed descriptions of interior damage or forced entry. However, Sheriff Chris Nanos stated that investigators did see concerning things at the home, and that led them to believe that a crime had occurred. At this stage, the timeline between 9:50 p.m. and 1:47 a.m., that really becomes critical. There is a roughly 4-hour window between Nancy's garage door closing and when her doorbell camera disconnected. There is then a 40-minute period between the camera disconnect and the pacemaker app disconnecting. Digital forensic analysts often focus on narrowing such windows to try and truly understand the sequence of events. And in this case, the frustrating lack of stored footage from the doorbell, it really created a significant limitation, something that could have possibly, by now, solved the case. In an incredibly useful but disturbing breakthrough in the case, investigators did later recover video from the system, and we'll get to that in a minute. Whilst I'm talking about the digital evidence, that pacemaker app disconnecting, it doesn't necessarily mean that Nancy's heart stopped beating. It could simply mean that the phone was turned off or destroyed, or, as was the case, Nancy was too far away from her phone for it to connect. Her cell phone was later found inside her home. Her daily medications were also reportedly left behind. Given her reliance on these medications, and the fact that she couldn't walk far at all, it's obvious that she did not leave voluntarily. To date, there have been no confirmed tyre tracks that have been released publicly. No footprints have been described in public briefings. There was no known vehicle connected to the scene, so investigators were left processing what forensic evidence they did have, while simultaneously preparing for a potential ransom scenario. And they were right to do so, because ransom notes would soon complicate this picture. On February the 3rd, multiple media outlets began receiving emails demanding millions of dollars in Bitcoin in exchange for Nancy's return. Those notes included 2 deadlines. The first deadline was February the 5th at 5 p.m. The second deadline was February the 9th at 5 p.m. One note reportedly included details about what Nancy had been wearing on the night that she disappeared. Authorities stated that they were taking those letters seriously. However, FBI Special Agent in charge, Heath Janke, he stated publicly that there had been no proof of life provided. In kidnapping investigations, proof of life is typically requested early to confirm that the victim is alive and is actually in the custody of the person making demands. Without proof of life, investigators must consider the possibility of fraud, of impersonation, or unrelated actors exploiting media coverage. However, semi-related, on February the 5th, the FBI announced a $50,000 reward for information leading to Nancy's recovery, or the arrest and conviction of those involved. That reward was later increased to $100,000. An arrest was made in connection with what authorities described as an imposter ransom demand. Officials stated that individual was not connected to the disappearance itself.
On behalf of our family, we want to thank all of you for the prayers for our beloved mom, Nancy. We feel them, and we continue to believe that she feels them too. Our mom is a kind, faithful, loyal, fiercely loving woman of goodness and light. She's funny, spunky, and clever. She has grandchildren that adore her and crowd around her and cover her with kisses. She loves fun and adventure. She is a devoted friend. She is full of kindness and knowledge. Talk to her and you'll see.
The light is missing from our lives. Nancy is our mother. We are her children. She is our beacon. She holds fast to joy in all of life's circumstances. She chooses joy day after day, despite having already passed through great trials of pain and grief. We are always going to be merely human. Just normal human people who need our mom. Mama, if you're listening, we need you to come home. We miss you.
Our mom is our heart and our home. She is 84 years old. Her health, her heart is fragile. She lives in constant pain. She is without any medicine. She needs it to survive. She needs it not to suffer. We too have heard the reports about a ransom letter in the media. As a family, we are doing everything that we can. We are ready to talk. However, we live in a world where voices and images are easily manipulated. We need to know, without a doubt, that she is alive and that you have her. We want to hear from you, and we are ready to listen. Please reach out to us. Mommy, if you are hearing this, you are a strong woman. You are God's precious daughter, Nancy. We believe and know that even in this valley, He is with you. Everyone is looking for you, Mommy, everywhere. We will not rest. Your children will not rest until we are together again. We speak to you every moment, and we pray without ceasing, and we rejoice in advance for the day that we hold you in our arms again. We love you, Mom.
Love you, Mom.
We love you, Mom. Stay strong.
We love you, Mom. We love you.
Meanwhile, Nancy's children, Savannah Guthrie and her siblings, they released public video appeals. In one video, Savannah stated, "We will pay." Authorities later clarified that that statement was in response to a message that had been sent to a television station. But despite the ransom demands and the public appeals, no verified follow-up communication was confirmed. No images, audio recordings or videos were released that establish proof of life.
We received your message, and we understand. We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay.
The FBI has publicly stated that advances in artificial intelligence have made verification more complex, and that investigators will now require authentication before accepting any media as legitimate proof of life. Both ransom deadlines passed without confirmed payment and without any verified contact from a captor. In typical ransom cases, communication escalates or becomes more frequent as deadlines approach. But in this case, officials stated that there was no direct communication with the family beyond what had been sent to those media outlets. At this point, investigators were faced with two simultaneous realities. There was no physical evidence suggesting a forced removal from the home, and there were also ransom communications that had not been authenticated. The question became whether these ransom notes were connected to the crime at all, or whether they were just opportunistic interference. That uncertainty would only deepen once video evidence from the night of the disappearance was released.
I can only imagine what the family's going through. I mean, it's just hell, just not knowing. And it's over 2 weeks now, so I just hope there's closure soon.
On February the 10th, the FBI released surveillance images, as well as short video clips that had been recovered from Nancy's home security system. The footage showed a masked individual at her front door during the early morning hours of February the 1st. In one clip, the individual approaches the camera and then raises a gloved hand towards it. In another, the individual was seen holding a flashlight in his mouth while attempting to cover the lens with vegetation from the yard. The FBI described the individual as male, as approximately 5'9" to 5'10", and with an average build. He was wearing gloves, a face mask, and a black 25-litre Ozark Trail Hiker Pack backpack. The backpack was identified as a product sold exclusively in Walmart. Investigators began reviewing Walmart sales records, looking at that specific backpack model over the previous several months. Authorities also began reviewing surveillance footage from local Walmart locations in the Tucson area. Retail trace investigations often rely on narrowing down purchase windows, payment methods, and in-store camera footage to identify potential buyers. However, items such as this are mass-produced and widely sold, and this can significantly expand the pool of potential purchasers. Even so, Sheriff Nanos later described the backpack as one of the most promising leads in this case so far. Investigators also began visiting gun shops in the Tucson area. According to one store owner interviewed by media, FBI agents showed images of individuals and inquired about firearm purchases within the past year.
Outside of the neighborhood, detectives are looking into local gun stores. We're told agents are asking owners for purchases made in the past year. A reporter with our sister station in Tucson, KOLD, talked with Philip Martin, a gun store owner who says an agent walked into his shop sometime last week. He says the agent showed him papers with pictures of men that looked like mugshots and their names.
I want to say there was probably 6 to 8 people per sheet, and he wanted to know if I could check on our system if any of those people had purchased a gun in the last year.
The suspects from the released CCTV footage, it did appear that they were armed. However, no specific firearm model has been publicly confirmed. Around the same time as the footage being released, law enforcement detained an individual during a traffic stop in Rio Rico. This is approximately 60 miles south of Tucson near the US-Mexico border. Authorities searched a residence in that area. The detained individual was later released without charges.
The FBI and the Pima County Sheriff's Office confirming a man was detained but later released after investigators conducted a search just a short drive from Nancy Guthrie's home into the early morning hours. Let's go ahead and bring in ABC's Alex Stone, who's joining me live now from Tucson with the latest here. Alex, there is still so many questions and a lot of information that law enforcement officials, they're not revealing. But what do we know at this hour right now?
Yeah, Gio, they're not saying why they went into that neighborhood last night. We were actually with them, somewhat by mistake, but in the convoy as they were going in, and we were watching these SWAT team vehicles that were going into the neighborhood only about 2 miles away from where we are here at the Guthrie home right now. They went in with a lot of firepower. They had a lot of SWAT team vehicles, armored vehicles going in, a lot of patrol vehicles as well. They shut down the street, and they were in there for a number of hours in the rain and cold last night as they were executing a search warrant. And then maybe 3 or 4 blocks away from there at a fast food restaurant, there was a traffic stop where we saw the FBI respond to that as well. And they detained a man for a number of hours and seemed to be doing something with him, maybe taking DNA swabs and inspecting a Range Rover, even putting up a tarp so that we could not see what they were doing around that Range Rover as photos were being taken and they were looking in the back of it. And in the end now, our sources are saying nobody was arrested. There was that one person detained, but not arrested, it appears, that they executed a search warrant and that they were acting on a tip as part of this investigation as they have been looking into tips and carrying out leads. But as of today, we are told that nobody was arrested in all of the activity last night. This is the second time. Earlier in the week, there was the man about an hour south of here in Rio Rico, where he was detained for a number of hours. Turned out he was a delivery man who may have delivered to this area, why his cell phone and his car may have been in the area. The sheriff's saying that that man is not totally cleared at this point, but they have kind of moved on from him. Last night, they were following up on a tip, and they carried out that search warrant.
And as investigators expand this search, they are still asking for tips right now. What are they asking the community to do right now?
Yeah, Gio, they're asking for anybody who might have video, and in really all of Pima County now, but specifically in a 2-mile radius around this home, they are asking people to go back to their Ring or their Nest or whatever brand they've got cameras again and to look one more time, but not just around the time of the crime 2 weeks ago, but they're now saying anytime from January 1st through February 2nd that they want them to go and just do a quick shuffle through their cameras and see anybody suspicious. Is there anything that would show somebody casing these neighborhoods or a car, somebody who looks like the video that we saw from the doorbell here at the home from the night of the crime?
A SWAT operation was also conducted at a residence, approximately just 2 miles from Nancy's home. Multiple individuals were then detained during warrant execution, but again, no arrests were made. Separately, a grey Range Rover was stopped and its driver was questioned. That individual was also released. At this stage of the investigation, despite video evidence of a masked individual at Nancy's front door, no suspect or person of interest has been publicly identified. The released footage confirmed that someone was present at Nancy's door in the early hours of February the 1st. But what it could not do was confirm what happened inside the home.
This is Cameron Guthrie. I'm speaking for the Guthrie family. Whoever is out there holding our mother, we want to hear from you. We haven't heard anything directly. We need you to reach out, and we need a way to communicate with you so we can move forward. But first, we have to know that you have our mom. We want to talk to you, and we are waiting for contact.
On February the 12th, investigators recovered a black glove, approximately 1.5 to 2 miles from Nancy's residence. The glove appeared visually consistent with the gloves that were worn by the masked individual seen in the doorbell footage. Authorities reported that approximately 16 gloves were recovered in the surrounding area. Most of those gloves, though, were determined to belong to searchers and to investigators who had discarded them whilst combing the scene. I don't know about you, but that wouldn't fill me with confidence if Nancy was my mother. Surely that's contaminating a potential crime scene. I mean, you'd have thought you'd have been more careful. After testing, however, one of those gloves contained DNA from an unknown male. The FBI stated that the glove with the unknown profile, it appeared to match the gloves worn by the individual in the surveillance video. The DNA profile was submitted to CODIS, which is the FBI's combined DNA index system. CODIS contains millions of offender DNA profiles that have been collected through prior arrests and convictions. A match in CODIS can link a suspect to a crime if that individual's DNA has previously been entered into that system. On February the 17th, authorities confirmed that the DNA from that glove returned no matches in CODIS. The DNA from that glove It also did not match the DNA collected from inside Nancy's home. Sheriff Nano stated that he did not consider the lack of CODIS match to be a definitive setback in the case. He noted that additional DNA evidence that was recovered from the residence, was still under analysis. When a DNA profile does not match CODIS, investigators may turn to investigative genetic genealogy. This method involves comparing DNA to commercial databases to identify potential familial connections. Authorities stated that they were exploring that option. At the same time, investigators deployed a device known as a signal sniffer via helicopter. Signal sniffers are capable of detecting low-power electronic signals emitted by devices such as pacemakers. The goal was to identify whether Nancy's pacemaker could be detected within a certain geographic range. No public confirmation has been made that any detection actually occurred.
Well, good morning, guys. Thanks for inviting me back. I'm not really disappointed in that because I didn't really expect much with the glove. I didn't see from my experience level how you could really connect that glove to the foreign DNA that was found in the house. Now, the DNA in the house is the one thing that I would be hopeful for. Now, everything that we heard so far is it's not in CODIS, so the guy doesn't have apparently a requirement to put his DNA into that system, even if he has prior criminal history and arrests of violence. But the mere fact that he's in there and they can compare it with maybe family members that went into the genealogical sites and did it for recreational purposes, I'm hoping that something will come from that working backwards.
So that's kind of interesting. They're going to go to those sites like 23andMe and see if anything matches up. Do they need like warrants for that, or, you know, they cooperate?
Well, it depends on the site. I would get a warrant for a lot of those things because then you can't get attacked later on that you went in there. Some of the sites may require a warrant. Others maybe will just do it because they feel like cooperating with law enforcement. So you can't really draw a straight conclusion on that. There's enough sites out there to investigate and to go into. Hopefully that'll lead to something, because right now the fact that we don't have a ransom note that has a recent photo of Nancy attached to it, it makes me skeptical about a lot of these things. And because they only give out so much information, wise for them, because they don't want to put too much out there, it's difficult for us to draw conclusions and come up with some ideas on what they're doing. I know they're working hard, there's no doubt about that, but they're pretty tight-lipped about everything.
And when we talk about some of the key pieces of evidence that investigators are also looking at, we talk about that backpack, a specific type of backpack that apparently Walmart exclusively has. Where does that lead investigators? I mean, are they going to now look at receipts and credit cards? I mean, how do they move forward with that part of it?
Well, I'm pretty sure they've already been to Walmart, to a variety of different stores, and checking to see if they have video footage from purchases. Like if you go into Walmart and you make a purchase at the self-serve, they're going to have a photo of your face. It's going to be on there. Whether or not they store that long enough so it isn't written over, that's another thing that we'd have to worry about. But the mere fact that you see the guy walking around in the camera view at the front of the house with the backpack, and the fact that it looks full suggests to me that he probably wasn't there to do a burglary, because if I went to do a burglary, I'd have an empty backpack so I can put stuff in it.
You know, when you sort of zoom out on this, it's been more than 2 weeks that Nancy Guthrie has been missing. You've seen dozens, hundreds of cases. Are you shocked that there hasn't been more that we've learned so far about this case? I mean, as we sort of zoom out and look at it as a whole?
Well, Dan, you know, this is an interesting thing. That we worked a lot of violent crimes at the police department where I was employed, and a lot of them were murders and things like that. But the ransom kidnapping in the United States is a fairly rare crime. There's a lot of child abductions that happen with disgruntled parents going through a divorce and things like that. But an actual kidnap, like you'll see in a movie or something like that, where they have a ransom demand and they have a photo of the victim restrained, these things are really rare in domestic law enforcement. Yeah, in Mexico, of course, you know, you got the cartels doing things like that, but up here, it's pretty rare. So the mere fact that we don't have a solid ransom note, I know TMZ has gotten some things, but I don't know if anybody has verified that there's any legitimacy behind those. It could be something as simple as somebody coming out of the woodwork and trying to get some Bitcoin because they feel there's a way they can do it. But without some solid proof that Nancy is fine and you know what you're paying for, it's really difficult to honor a reward.
Got it. Detective John Bueller, thank you so much.
Now, by mid-February, authorities reported receiving close to 40,000 tips from the public. Sheriff Nanos has publicly cleared Nancy's children, as well as their spouses, as being suspects in this case. He stated that they were simply victims of this case, and they had been cooperative throughout the investigation.
Can you talk about the significance of the sheriff clearing the family, because they've been under an unfair cloud of suspicion for more than 2 weeks now, and that just adds insult to injury on top of the pain they're experiencing.
Yeah, I mean, not only is it a big deal for the family, obviously it helps when there's so many people talking about everything, in this case 24/7. And yeah, you have to, I mean, you're going through grief and you've got this suspicious light cast on you that's just so hard. But it is interesting that the sheriff cleared them before there was an arrest made. So that would lead me to believe there's more that's going on behind the scenes to be able to definitively make that statement, but definitely huge for the family. And I hope that that's, you know, somewhat of a solace. I'm not sure there is a solace for the family right now, given what they're going through, but at least to have that off their plate with what the sheriff's saying tonight, it's huge.
They've been very transparent, but yeah, day 16, let's hope that they have a lot more that they haven't given us and that they're further along in the process. Brianna, we appreciate it.
Despite the release of video evidence, the recovery of a glove with unknown DNA, the execution of multiple search warrants, and thousands of public tips, authorities stated that there was still no identified suspect and no confirmed proof of life. Sheriff Nanos stated that there was also no proof of death. He said that he believed Nancy was still out there, but at this stage, the investigation remains open, with forensic testing ongoing and motive still undetermined.
Hi there, everybody. I wanted to come on and just share a few thoughts as we enter into another week of this nightmare. I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for all of the prayers and the love that we have felt, my sister and brother and I, and that our mom has felt. Because we believe that somehow, some way, she is feeling these prayers and that God is lifting her even in this moment and in this darkest place. We believe our mom is still out there. We need your help. Law enforcement is working tirelessly around the clock trying to bring her home, trying to find her. She was taken and we don't know where. And we need your help. So I'm coming on just to ask you, not just for your prayers, but no matter where you are, even if you're far from Tucson, if you see anything, if you hear anything, if there's anything at all that seems strange to you, that you report to law enforcement. We are at an hour of desperation, and we need your help.
By the third week of the investigation, two competing narratives began circulating publicly. Sheriff Nanos continued to describe the case as an abduction. He also stated that motive would have to be determined by evidence and not assumptions.
Where do you think Nancy Guthrie is?
I think she's somewhere here in our community.
Locally?
Yeah.
What makes you think that?
I just do. I don't know why. I don't have any evidence to prove that. But I just believe that she's somewhere here locally.
But just from what I'm seeing from the outset, from the video and what I've heard and so forth, to me, and I've been doing it for quite a number of years. To me, it looks, my estimation is the kidnapping was not the primary motivation here. It may have obviously turned into a kidnapping, but I don't think that was the primary motivation. My belief is I think this was going to be a robbery or some type of home invasion. And it was also committed by, I think, someone who is somewhat familiar with the home.
Meanwhile, a report from a local crime correspondent, it suggested that investigators believe the incident may have been a burglary gone wrong. That report stated the removal of Nancy may not have been the original intent. The FBI responded to this by saying it had no knowledge of that theory originating from them. Sheriff Nanos also stated that the burglary did not come from his office either. No official statement has confirmed a burglary motive at all. At the same time, Ransom communications demanding Bitcoin, the notes that had been sent to media outlets. Those communications included the deadlines that passed without proof of life or death. In connection with those notes though, an arrest was made in connection with an imposter ransom demand. But that arrest did not resolve the central case.
Yeah, and I don't think there is any evidence to say that Nancy is in Mexico, but at the same time, this is what's new and interesting. There is a federal law enforcement source who confirmed to our Libby Dean that the FBI has now been in contact with Mexican authorities in connection with the Nancy Guthrie case. So obviously they are keeping that possibility open. And remember, the border is very, very close to where I am right now at Nancy Guthrie's house. It's just about an hour to an hour and a half from here. It's close to where we saw that SWAT raid the other night in connection with the case. So now officially the FBI is in contact with Mexican officials. I've been talking to sources here on the ground for the last couple of weeks who all have said the same thing, that this does not appear at all to be cartel related. It shows no signs of cartel involvement, frankly, just because the cartel is very organized in what they do and precise, and they wouldn't go in and kidnap an older woman this way. And then what we saw in the video in terms of, putting grass in front of the camera, they're just, better at it than that. They would have pulled the camera right away. So there's no signs that it's cartel related, but that doesn't mean that whoever did this did not take Nancy to Mexico. It's two separate issues there, which could be the reason now we're finding out that the FBI has been in contact with Mexican authorities, Nicole.
And Brian, really quickly, back to your one-on-one interview with the sheriff last night. He does tell you he is confident that this case will be solved.
He does, and he said that all along. He said he has hope that it will be solved. He does not consider it a cold case, that they are investigating leads every single day. But in terms of specifics, why he thinks it may happen sooner than later, he doesn't really have any. I mean, there's obviously a lot that they're not telling us, Nicole, but he does seem confident that it will be solved for sure.
All right, Brian Inton with the latest on this breaking news, live for us there.
In many abduction cases, investigators look for financial motive, for personal grievances, or for opportunistic crime patterns. But in this case, no leading theory has been announced. If this was a targeted abduction, investigators would expect planning, surveillance, and deliberate concealment. If this was a burglary that had escalated, investigators would expect signs of property disturbance or opportunistic behavior. If the ransom communications had been legitimate, there would have typically been sustained contact. But if fraudulent, they simply complicate the case. Each path leads to a different motive. Each motive requires a different suspect profile. At present, the evidence publicly known, it does not definitively confirm any one theory. What happened between 9:50 p.m. and 1:47 a.m. inside that home, we still don't know. Why did the doorbell camera disconnect before motion was detected? Was the masked individual acting alone? Was the glove intentionally discarded? How could there be no match in CODIS? Would this be a first-time offender? If Nancy was targeted, then why her? If this was a burglary, then just how wrong could it have gone? Authorities continue to investigate. The family continues to hope. For now though, the case remains unsolved. As I'm making this video, as it's actually almost ready, some new information about some suspicious activity has just been released. Prior to Nancy vanishing, there were some incriminating Google Trend results. Google Trends just shows the popularity of different searches on Google. Someone, currently unknown, but in Arizona, they searched for Nancy Guthrie's address. This included some image searches too. These searches were made between March 2025 and the end of that same year. Another creepy search that was made in Tucson, they showed that someone was searching for Savannah Guthrie's salary. These searches were made between December the 13th and December 20th, 2025. So, someone in that area was possibly, allegedly, doing research for nefarious reasons. It is sadly looking more and more likely that this was a kidnapping in order to extort money. What comes to my mind now though, and of course this is an opinion and a theory, I'm making no allegations, is that maybe the perpetrator, the person that had been Googling these things, they broke in order to kidnap Nancy, but her heart simply couldn't take the stress of the situation. This could be why, it would explain why, even though the family have publicly stated that they are willing to pay a ransom, that the kidnapper has not claimed any money. This is really getting darker and darker by the second. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.